It all began with a horn. Not just any horn, but one of those obnoxiously loud, attention-seeking parade-style honks that rattles your bones and sends birds flying from their perches. I opened my front door, still in my slippers, and there it was. A full-blown white stretch wedding limo sitting right in my driveway, as though it had been invited. There were rose petals on the hood, the windows tinted like a celebrity's, and some guy in a tuxedo was lounging against my garage like he had rented the place. I blinked twice, stepped outside, and uttered the only words my brain could process. What in the actual circus is this? Now, for some context, I live in a quiet cul-de-sac, peaceful, predictable, boring, in the best way possible. My house sits at the end of the street, surrounded by pine trees, and boasts a long private driveway that I bought specifically to keep the world at bay. I park my boat there, a sleek white vessel with navy blue trim, proudly named No Compromise. Ironically, in hindsight, that name really was a warning. So, imagine my surprise when I stepped outside and saw the limo parked right in the middle of my driveway, completely blocking access to my garage, front steps, and off-course me boat. There was no note, no knock, no request. Just the engine idling, with some guy flipping through his phone like he was waiting for room service. I cleared my throat. He didn't look up. I raised my voice and asked if he realized this was private property. He looked at me, smirked, and said, "Oh, we were told it was okay. It's just for the ceremony. Should be done in a few hours." Before I could respond, I heard the distinct click-clack of heels on pavement. I turned and saw her, Karen, dressed in a cream-colored blazer that screamed, "I control your mailbox," clipboard tucked under her arm, and that smug smile that was wider than her fake eyelashes. "Don't be dramatic," she said, waving her hand as if I were just another complaint to be brushed aside. "It's my daughter's big day. Surely you can sacrifice your ugly boat space for a few hours of joy." Now, I've had run-ins with Karen before. She once left a passive-aggressive letter on my windshield because my grass was a quarter-inch too tall. She tried to fine me for having a flagpole in my yard that wasn't in the HOA-approved shade of beige. So, believe me when I say this wasn't an innocent misunderstanding. This was Karen's masterpiece of entitlement. She planned this. She knew I'd be home and assumed I'd roll over and let her take over my driveway like she owned it. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Karen," I said, "you didn't ask. You didn't even inform me. You just dumped a limo in my driveway like I'm running a wedding venue." She crossed her arms, clearly already annoyed at me for not smiling through her invasion. "It's just for a little while. The limo needs to be close so the bride can make a grand entrance. And you never use this space anyway. That ridiculous boat takes up half of it. You should be grateful we made use of the rest." Grateful? I turned to look at the limo, the driver now watching with mild amusement. "So, you're not moving it?" I asked, giving them one last chance to act like rational adults. Karen smiled, her eyes twinkling with self-righteous fury. "No, and if you try anything, I'll have the HOA fine you for harassment. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to coordinate." She turned and walked off, her heels stabbing into the pavement like punctuation marks. I stood there for a long minute, staring at the limo, then at my boat, then back at the limo. And that's when the idea hit me, a wicked, wonderful, beautifully petty idea. If they wanted to play games on my property, I was going to make sure they got the full experience of what happens when you mess with the wrong homeowner. I walked into the garage, opened the big steel door, and sunlight poured in, illuminating No Compromise like a holy spotlight. She was already on her trailer, parked and ready. I backed my truck up, hitched the trailer in record time, and pulled out, slow and steady, methodical like a scene from a movie, just before the villain delivers their final line. As I drove around the block, I could see the wedding setup taking shape on the community lawn, down the street, white chairs, a flower arch, people in uncomfortable shoes pretending they liked each other. Karen was at the center, barking orders, waving her arms, totally unaware of the showdown heading her way. When I returned, the limo was still in place. The tuxedo guy had now moved to sit on the hood. Perfect. I reversed my truck and boat into position directly behind the limo, parked with mathematical precision, nose to nose with the limo's trunk, trailer bumpers just inches from their bumper. There was zero chance of escape. The limo was now stuck between my house and a 25-foot watercraft named No Compromise. I stepped out of my truck, walked up to the porch, grabbed a folding chair, and sat there like a sentry. The limo driver got out, confused. He circled the car, looked at the boat, looked at me. Hey, is that staying there? I smiled. Absolutely. From a distance, I heard Karen scream a full-blooded, throat-clinging screech of rage that echoed across the neighborhood and startled a squirrel out of a tree. That's when I knew I'd struck gold. The wedding wasn't even an hour away, the limo wasn't going anywhere, and Karen, well, she had no idea what kind of storm was brewing. Karen came stomping down the sidewalk like a bridezillous mother possessed. Her heels were clacking faster than her brain could process what was happening. She had her phone in one hand and her infamous HOA clipboard in the other. When she saw the boat parked behind the limo, her entire posture froze like someone had paused her mid-scream. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, before she managed to bark out, "You need to move that thing now." I didn't even flinch. I sat in my chair on the porch, sipping lemonade, legs crossed, enjoying the view like it was live entertainment. I made sure to pause before responding, just long enough to let the silence sting. "You mean my boat on my driveway?" I asked, feigning innocence so hard it was practically sarcasm. "Yeah, I just thought I'd do something with all this space you said I don't use." She was fuming. "The limo needs to leave after the ceremony. My daughter has a hair appointment at the salon, and then they have photos at the lake. You've boxed them in." I tilted my head and looked at the massive hunk of fiberglass and trailer metal behind the limo. "Huh, you're right. Looks tight in there. Maybe they shouldn't have parked in a stranger's driveway." "You're being impossible." "No, Karen," I said calmly. "I'm being neighborly. I'm giving you a valuable lesson in boundaries and physics." Karen's lip quivered like she wanted to yell, but realized shouting would draw more attention from the arriving guests. Instead, she took a deep breath and tried to reason. "Look, let's not ruin the day. Just move the boat, and we'll be gone before sunset. No harm done." I leaned forward, grinning. "There was already harm done the moment you thought my property was your convenience store parking lot." She turned on her heel and stomped back toward the gathering crowd of flower girls, groomsmen, and confused guests who were slowly realizing something was very wrong. I heard her on the phone a few seconds later, voice rising with every sentence, clearly calling for backup. Part of me expected her to summon the HOA goon squad or her cousin with a tow truck, but what actually arrived was even better. A police cruiser pulled into the neighborhood about 20 minutes later, not with sirens blaring, just slow and steady, pulling into the cul-de-sac with the kind of caution cops use when they've been called to civil disturbances involving entitled people. Karen's eyes lit up like she'd summoned the gods. She practically ran to the cop, pointing at me like I had committed war crimes with a fishing boat. The officer stepped out, calm and professional, and walked up to me first. "Good afternoon, sir. We got a call about a parking dispute." "Dispute's a strong word," I said, handing him a cold water bottle I had ready just for this moment. "Karen here had a limo park in my driveway without permission. So, I parked my boat behind it. Now she's mad." The officer nodded slowly and looked at the scene. "So the limo isn't yours, and the boat is?" "Correct. And I own this property. Got the title inside if you need it." Karen jumped in like her voice couldn't be left out for more than 10 seconds. "He's being difficult on purpose. This is a wedding, and he's sabotaging it. Just make him move the stupid boat." The officer looked between us, obviously trying not to laugh. He cleared his throat and asked, "Did you have permission to use this driveway?" "Well, no. But it's just a driveway. It's not like it's inside his house." He raised an eyebrow. "So, you parked a vehicle that doesn't belong to you on private property without permission, and now you're upset because the owner used his own property to block it?" Karen opened her mouth, but had no answer. The officer looked at me and said, "Technically, you're within your rights. It's your property. You didn't damage anything. It's a civil matter at best." Karen's arms flailed. "So you're not going to do anything?" The officer smiled politely. "Oh, I'm doing something. I'm leaving because there's nothing illegal here. But I'd suggest you figure out a way to get that limo moved after the boat leaves, whenever that may be." Karen was speechless. I almost wished I had popcorn, but just when I thought the show was over, a sleek car pulled up, and out stepped the bride. The poor woman stepped out, smiling, expecting happy chaos and music. Instead, she found her mother arguing with a police officer, a boat blocking her limo, and wedding guests whispering like they were watching a soap opera unfold in real life. Karen rushed to her sweetheart. "Don't worry. It's just a little misunderstanding. Nothing to panic about." But the bride locked eyes with me. She walked up to Minute angrily, but with an expression of exhausted curiosity. "Excuse me, is this your house?" "Yep, and the boat's mine too." "Did my mom really park the limo here without asking?" I nodded. I tried to be nice about it. She took a long breath, looked at the limo, then turned slowly toward her mother. "Mom, what did you do?" Karen tried to explain, babbling something about venue logistics and making things smooth and efficient, but the bride had already turned away, grabbing her phone. "We're calling another ride." "Move the limo." "I'm not dealing with this. I told you to stay out of the planning, and you promised you would." Karen's mouth fell open like someone had yanked out her batteries. Meanwhile, I could hear several guests behind me muttering things like, "about time," and she finally stood up to her. Just when I thought the moment couldn't get better, the limo driver returned from the back seat. "Hey, so I've been waiting in this heat for 2 hours. If this car doesn't move in 10 minutes, I'm charging overtime." Karen's face went from flushed to ghost white. I almost felt battlemost, but I wasn't done yet. Not by a mile. The best part of this revenge was still sitting quietly in my back pocket, waiting for just the right time to drop. And once I did, Karen's meltdown would go from bad to legendary. The next morning, word had already spread like wildfire across the neighborhood. By sunrise, I had 3 texts and a voicemail from neighbors who just happened to be walking by and wanted to say how much they admired my creative use of personal property. A couple of them even offered to bring lawn chairs for a front-row view if the standoff continued. I told them not to worry, it was far from over. While the bride had called for another ride and escaped the disaster her mother created, the limo, it was still parked there. And Karen, she wasn't done either. Her fury had evolved overnight into full-blown entitlement mode, and this time, she was dragging back up. Around 9:45 a.m., a small convoy arrived. First, Karen's minivan loaded with wedding decorations and what looked like a few angry relatives. Then came the HOA president himself, Harold, clipboard in hand like it was a weapon. Finally, in a dramatic touch, an unmarked tow truck crept around the corner, its driver looking confused but ready for chaos. I was already sitting on my porch, coffee in hand, watching it all unfold like a perfectly rehearsed play. Karen stepped out first, looked directly at me, and marched across the lawn like she owned every square inch of it. "Okay," she barked. "This has gone on long enough. We've given you your little show, but now it's time to grow up and move that stupid boat." "Morning, Karen," I replied, waving casually. "Nice day for a parking dispute, huh?" She didn't smile. "The wedding is over. The guests are gone. The photographer couldn't even get all the pictures because of this circus you created. Just move the boat so we can get the limo out, and we'll pretend this whole thing never happened." I raised an eyebrow. "Pretend?" "Oh no, Karen. I'm not letting this little memory disappear. I might frame a photo of this boat limo sandwich and hang it in my living room." That's when Harold shuffled over, clearing his throat. "Sir, as president of the HOA, I'm here to inform you that you're in violation of community harmony guidelines. We request you to remove the obstruction so that the vehicle may exit peacefully." I sat down my coffee, stood up, and walked down to meet him. "Community harmony guidelines?" I asked. "Is that what we're calling trespassing now? Because I've got video footage, timestamps, and 3 witness statements saying Karen authorized that limo to park in my driveway without asking." Harold blinked like I'd slapped him. "Be reasonable. This is a misunderstanding." "No," I said, my voice sharp now. "This is entitlement. And if you want to get the law involved, go ahead. But until the limo owner comes to me personally, apologizes, and signs a liability waiver, that boat's not moving." Karen exploded. "You're humiliating me." "That's funny," I said, turning toward her. "I thought you did that all by yourself." She stormed off in a huff, grabbing her phone to make another call. The tow truck driver, still waiting at the end of the driveway, got out and came up to me. "So, am I towing the boat or the limo?" "Neither," I replied. "Unless you want to get sued. This is private property. That limo's not mine, that boat is. You tow anything, you'll be writing me a check." He nodded and walked back to his truck, clearly deciding this circus wasn't worth the peanuts he was being paid. No legal leverage, and no one willing to break the law for her. Karen shifted tactics. She sent a relative over a guy in his 50s with slicked back hair and a gold chain who introduced himself as Tony. "Look, pal," Tony said, trying the friendly route. "I get it. You're upset. But can't we just call this even and move on? My niece's wedding got ruined. Her mom's freaking out. I've been up all night listening to everyone blame everyone else. We moved the limo, forget it ever happened." I gave him credit for trying. He actually sounded sincere. But I wasn't budging. "Tell you what, Tony, I'll move the boat in 2 hours. But before I do, I'm going to post the whole story online with pictures. I've got videos too. I think people should know what happens when someone thinks they're above asking for permission." Tony looked at me, his face filled with disbelief. "You're going to embarrass the whole family." "No," I said. "Karen already did that. I'm just putting the spotlight where it belongs." At that point, Karen returned, looking smug again. "Fine," she snapped. "I just spoke to legal. They said you're creating a hostile environment, and your limo created an illegal one." I replied, "So we're even, except I'm not pressing charges yet." Karen's face twisted. "What will it take to make you drop this?" I smiled. "An apology on video, posted to the neighborhood group chat." Karen looked like she was about to combust. "No, absolutely not. Then the boat stays. And if it's still here tomorrow, I'm turning it into a barbecue pit. Might even host a driveway fish fry. You're invited." There was silence. Everyone stared at her. Even Harold looked like he wanted to disappear into the shrubs. Eventually, Karen caved. Sort of. She didn't film an apology, but the bride showed up again, apologized directly to me, and convinced her mother to sign a handwritten note admitting she had unknowingly used private property without the owner's consent. I took a photo of the note, shook the bride's hand, and finally moved the boat as the limo sputtered to life and pulled away. Karen sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tight you'd think it was bolted shut. But as far as I was concerned, the fight wasn't over yet. Because this wasn't just about a limo, a wedding, or a ruined day. It was about a pattern, and Karen was about to find out that her reign over the neighborhood wasn't as secure as she thought. Not when the whole block had just witnessed her fall. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. It was the kind of silence you feel when a storm has passed, but the clouds still hang low, threatening more rain. Karen didn't show her face on the street. The limo was gone. The wedding disaster seemed to have faded. But the energy in the neighborhood had shifted. It wasn't over. Everyone knew it. She wasn't the type to take a loss without plotting some kind of retaliation. I just didn't expect her to drag the entire HOA into it like some twisted encore. It started with a letter slipped under my door. No envelope, just a single printed sheet on official HOA letterhead that reeked of Karen's perfume. It accused me of aggressive obstruction of communal peace, inappropriate storage of marine equipment, and deliberate disruption.